Do 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 do. Hi there guys, how are you doing today? Welcome back to my channel called Blast in the Past, and this time around I have something completely special. And no, it's not a review of the film K-19 starring Harrison Ford, but it will be about Harrison Ford. So I would like to put in my 2 cents on this new Indiana Jones film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which actually premiered 2 days ago on Friday, and there was the pre-screening obviously, on Thursday as usual.
But I've been looking for this all my life.
By the way, for this occasion I wanted to dig out my Indiana Jones collection, the first 4 films, on Blu-ray, but I couldn't find it anywhere. For all the money in the world, it is somewhere there, but I have no idea where. So that's why I put on the screen K-19 with Harrison Ford, and he plays a Russian officer, I remember, but he speaks English, obviously.
Harrison Ford.
Our situation is desperate. At any moment we could have an explosion.
Hiroshima, 1.4 megatons.
However, just to have something related to Ford, why not, in this manner. I hope that it won't distract you too much from the main topic of this film, which is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So the 5th installment to the renowned franchise. Don't worry, it's a pretty spoiler-free opinion because it's not even a review, because to be honest, I haven't seen this film yet. I would like to see it at the cinema, but so far I just haven't got a chance to do so. Anyhow, I've been watching many video clips on that and how disastrous it will be, and I would like to express my thoughts on that, on the whole situation, if I may. Just for the record, why not, for fun, let's do something out of the box this time. And so let's kick it off.
During the war.
First of all, so there have been numerous reports about the bloated budget of this film, which rounds up to $300 million, which when you think about it, it's really incredible. It is unthinkable that this kind of film, this adventure flick, it cost much more than many other spectacular films like those Marvel, DC comic films, and this is a very huge risk, a very big gamble. And many people claim that it will never pay off, because realistically speaking, if the official budget, at least the one claimed by Disney, is almost $300 million, so you need to add the marketing costs, which is half of it, if not more, $150 million, and then you have also probably some other hidden costs, and apart from that, so whatever is grossed at the box office, at the cinema, it needs to be split by half, because the cinemas, they take their fair share of that amount, so it is usually split equally. So actually Disney will gross only half of this sum. And when you add all those numbers up, so it seems that the film needs to gross around $900 million, something in the neighborhood of this amount. And this is crazy, this is so wild. So $900 million just to break even, and $1 billion to make a profit. This is crazy and this is unheard of, and I'm afraid that it's just one big shot in the foot, if not into 2 feet, on the part of Disney and people responsible for that project. I've heard that this bloated budget was caused by numerous reshoots. They were not satisfied with the first version, the initial one, that's why they added some scenes and then they came back on the set and etc. And that's why myriad of reshoots, and it increased the budget to this astronomical amount. So it explains it, but only partially.
Sorry.
Can't have they just thought of a better script in the first place to begin with, before the shooting started? Instead of that, so they started introducing some varieties, some changes, some rewrites later on. I know that you have pre-screenings and you test the reactions of the audience, and sometimes something may not go according to plan, but generally, so this is unthinkable, because in this era everything needs to be planned carefully. Apart from big blockbusters, like even right now the Marvel films and the DC comic films, they are in a pickle, so it's very difficult to count on the box office. It's not a sure thing like it was in the past. So that was a very risky move, and to think that this kind of money could be recuperated so easily, it seems that it's only fool's hope, I'm afraid.
Hitler made mistakes, and with this, I will correct them all.
You stole it.
Then you stole it.
On the one hand, as a fan of Harrison Ford, this is unsettling news to me, because I wouldn't like him as an actor and as Indiana Jones to go out in this bad style, to leave with something like this, like one of the biggest flops, if not the biggest flop in the history of whole Hollywood, of the Dream Factory, of the Tinseltown as they call it. But on the other hand, so maybe if it really flops, so then it would be a lesson to be learned finally. That the budget should be limited, that you really should think the project through, and it should be well thought and well written. And I think that many people take issue with this political correctness, whatever it means in the modern world. But I've heard some hearsay that the main character, the protagonist, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, is pushed as the successor of Indiana Jones and as the next character.
Well, in that case, what are we drinking?
Same for the goddaughter.
Because Disney presumably has already mapped out several spin-offs and several continuations to that. Because why not? Why not to keep making a profit? But you have to start making it in the first place. Trying to force the viewer to accept something like this is unthinkable, and it may simply backfire, in which this case apparently it has. That's why people are not even interested in watching, in seeing the new Indiana Jones film at the cinema, if at all. And that's pretty worrying, that something has changed.
What's going on with this country in general nowadays? Come on, and these pronouns. He, she, him, they, the, boom, bang, bop.
If even such a big name as Indiana Jones cannot draw people to the cinema, so it means that there is really little hope in terms of the future, and the future may look very bleak, unless something changes, and it changes for the better.
You think he'd be proud of this? Your father, his only daughter, selling her soul for bail money.
I know something about this film, although I haven't. And also I have a first-hand opinion from a friend of mine, so I know more or less what it's about and what might have gone wrong. First of all, people in unison, they say that the first act is very good, with de-aged Harrison Ford, because surprise, surprise, he was de-aged at some point in the film. And it looks really good, and you can feel this magic, the vibe of the old Indiana Jones films. Because mind you, the first one was released in 1981, The Riders of the Lost Ark. So many years ago, over 4 decades ago. And it has this magic, it has this energy. It's like putting back a pair of good old shoes. You feel at home.
Wondering what wonderful adventure the new day will bring to us.
But later on, so it goes in a very bad direction. It spirals out of control. It's a slippery slope. It's a roller coaster ride, but not in a good way. It's a very crazy and wacky one. And then you have current Harrison Ford, like a broken down character, bowed down with age. And the main female lead, she keeps allegedly making fun of him, poking fun at his age, him being a pensioner. All the time, and Harrison Ford is not this masculine character whom he used to be in the previous parts. And now the character of Phoebe Waller-Bridge takes the lead. And that's the idea for the new franchises, but apparently, having in mind the financial trouble of the film and Disney itself, it doesn't seem very likely that there will be any continuation at all in any form, but we shall see. Que sera sera, what will be, shall be, and only time will tell about that.
Who is this man?
I'm her godfather.
What else do I know from the hearsay and from what I've heard from my friend? It seems that Harrison Ford is in a pretty good shape considering his age, because he's 80 years old. So this is praiseworthy that he decided to take up this project in the first place. And in one of the scenes, there is a shirtless moment in which he presents his naked chest. He's bare-chested, and allegedly he looks really good for his age. He has a six-pack.
And we were stunned to see you take your shirt off in the second scene. I mean, it's just... And you've still got it. I mean, how do you keep fit?
Sir.
I've been blessed with this body.
Thanks for noticing.
The abdominal muscles are visible. So, really, props to Harrison Ford. He's been this kind of guy who's always been in shape, even if you have a look at the old Indiana Jones films. So, props to him, kudos to him, and this is really admirable. At the age of 80, can you imagine that?
Some people might think that's something special.
So this is good news. Also, in terms of the cast, I've heard that Mads Mikkelsen is fantastic. Really, he's part of this vibe, bringing back the vibe of the old Indiana Jones films. And he really is a good actor, so I'm not surprised.
Dr. Jones, get him.
And given enough space and potential, so he can make the best out of it. So, although the material offered to him might have not been the strongest one, so he just did his best, as any professional would do. Also, there is a cameo of Antonio Banderas, because this is what it is, apparently, reportedly. He has only a couple of lines of dialogue, so this is unfortunately just viewer bait, so it seems, just to add another popular, well-recognizable name to the cast. And what else?
Things I can't.
Unfortunately, I've heard that Phoebe Waller-Bridge is very unlikable in this film. That's what I've heard. Again, it's not my opinion, but I've heard from numerous sources that really there is no connection between her and the audience, and constantly pushing down, bringing down Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, because of his age, because he's geriatric or whatever. And this is really sad, because bringing down one character in order to promote the other one in this kind of way, this is just not fair. This is not fair with the fans, this is not fair with Indiana Jones as the character, and this is certainly not fair with Harrison Ford himself, who deserves respect for his glorious, luminous, rich career. And the fact that at the age of 80 he decided still to come back, to reprise his iconic role. So you have to give him respect, to show him some respect for that. And the film, apparently, it went in that way, just to present another broken down character who is tired with his life, who is fed up with everything, who is grumpy, who is a typical sourpuss, complaining about everything, lacking energy, which is in this case not very surprising at the age of 80, but you know what I'm talking about. And it creates this negative atmosphere, this negative vibe, and I think that we should be more appreciative of the elderly. Of older people. Don't you think so? We own them, we should be grateful and not to denigrate them in this kind of way. So I think that there should be a major change of this trend going forward. Unlike in the previous Star Wars films, in this Indiana Jones film as well, so it should change. And we should start presenting elderly people in a good light, to show their best qualities, and to create more uplifting stories and cheerful and optimistic. It is possible, because for instance, even in 2017 we had that very interesting crime comedy called Going in Style.
Ladies and gentlemen.
What are you chasing me for?
Starring Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Alan Arkin and Christopher Lloyd, and it was a very nice comedy. Of course, in the plot they also complained about their age, being tired, fed up with everything, but at the end, I think that they were presented in a pretty positive light. Maybe not what they tried to do, to rob a bank or that criminal activity or something of this sort, but that they could still be active and they could still take the reins of their lives. So we have to go into that direction and not denigrating them, diminishing the role of the elderly, the generation we owe so much to. This is unthinkable, and I think that something should change. So, like I said, so I don't want to see this film fail on the one hand for several reasons, but on the other hand, so maybe it should flop. It should be a spectacular disaster, because maybe only then would something change finally in Hollywood for the better.
Just stops to take a breath and just enjoy the fact that they're living, and it's a blessing to be alive.
Generally, I've noticed that the consensus is that this film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, is not as bad. It is acceptable, it is watchable, it is unnecessary, it is redundant also, so it shouldn't have been filmed in the first place, but since it is already there, speculating about that, it doesn't make too much of a sense. And like I've said, so it seems that it's still watchable. It has some better and worse moments. Some of the ideas presented there are good, some of them are horrible, pretty bad. And on average, people say that it is a little bit worse than The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull from 2008. And some people claim that it is on a par with the fourth part. So it is not that bad news, to be honest. You could have expected much worse. Of course, The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, so it's not a masterpiece either. So we have to separate that one from the original trilogy. This is obvious. But I remember I saw it at the cinema when it was released. I think it might have been May or June 2008. I remember that the first time I saw it, so either I was having fun watching it, or maybe I was just trying to convince myself that I was having fun. I've never rewatched it again. I've never come back to it. I remember that the ending, no spoilers, but that was out of this world. If you have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. You see what I did there. And I think that Spielberg likes this kind of theme, those motives in his motion pictures.
E.T. Home phone.
E.T. phone home.
However, also it had some good moments. There was some chemistry, something was going on.
Get on your front foot! Repulse!
The CGI was horrible. Of course, there was that infamous scene with a fridge and the explosion. All in all, it wasn't unwatchable, I think.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yeah, it wasn't any masterpiece. It was far from Spielberg's previous ones or his other work, his other films, his other motion pictures.
And the Oscar goes to... Steven Spielberg.
However, it still had some of that charm from the previous ones, from the predecessors. And I hope that this one also, it shows in parts, in some parts of it, throughout, here and there, you can still see some glimpses of that old Indiana Jones. Whether it's true or not, I can't say for sure right now, but what I've gathered from the video clips on YouTube and from the reviews, it's not what Disney executives make it out to be. Like, the best out of the whole franchise. I think that it was simply impossible to have filmed something like this. And allegedly it has not happened. I love talking about the box office results. I also love analyzing it, so this is my cup of tea, it's up my alley. And in this case, so it seems that Disney is facing a potentially gigantic disaster in terms of the revenue from the film, in terms of the money, which it was supposed to make, but it will probably not. Because again, coming back to the budget, $300 million plus those additional costs of marketing, and if it needs to earn, to gross 900 if not more, so this is almost impossible. Because recently The Flash has flopped completely, so it was an unmitigated disaster. I know it's not a Disney film, but still, you know, the expectations had been high.
Barry, what are you doing? Our kids are gonna want to see this.
And it turned completely the other way around. I think that it's currently being slowly pulled out of the cinemas. And Disney has had many flops so far. So there was that film about Buzz Lightyear.
Well, good night, Socks. Good night, Buzz.
Recently there have been Elemental, also by Pixar.
You see? He likes it!
And another flop like this. I don't think that it could sink down such a mogul as Disney, but it could put them in a really tight, really bad spot. I've seen some first results in terms of the box office, and the number there, as of now, as of Sunday, 2023, so it's the 2nd of July, it is $130 million. So as you can see, it's a far cry from those $900 million that everybody has been rambling about. So it's not a good sign for Disney. It's not a very positive sign. And also, allegedly, so the cinema theaters are just empty. People are completely not interested in this new Indiana Jones film. To add insult to injury. In terms of my personal pick for the best outing in the Indiana Jones franchise, so I've been wondering about it, because at first it was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, because there was this great dynamic between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery, so junior and senior.
You don't. Do you think my son would be that stupid that he would bring my diary all the way back here? You didn't, did you?
But I've kept coming back to the whole trilogy, except for the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I started appreciating the Temple of Doom more and more. And really, of course, it's something completely different from the first one, because it's much darker, it's gloomy, it's serious, pretty violent. I remember I saw it as a kid. I must have been 6 or 7 years old on a VHS tape.
Something connected.
And it was pretty scary to me back then, but really I also like the dynamic between the characters, and it would be very difficult for me to pick the only one, the ultimate Indiana Jones film. I would have to think that it would be either The Last Crusade, released later, or before the Temple of Doom. Don't make me pick the only one, don't force me to do it, because really I would need to rack my brain a lot to do so. However, the whole trilogy is worth recommending, worth seeing, so it's a must.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
So, historically, almost it's as big of a franchise as Star Wars, also starring Harrison Ford, at least in terms of the main character, the lead being so iconic.
I love you.
I know.
Another pretty worrying thing in terms of the box office results is the fact that Disney cannot count on China and Asia generally. Because as far as I know, so the previous Indiana Jones films have not been released there. So that would be actually the first one. That market, those viewers, they are not familiarized too much with Indiana Jones. They don't understand the cult of this character. And really, so far, China has saved Hollywood, the Hollywood industry, many times. Like, even I remember it was some time ago, but Terminator Genesis, it was saved by their market. And recently also Fast 10 or Fast X. So it did domestically very poorly.
Come with me if you want to live.
And only was it China that saved it from being a total disaster, the biggest disaster in the history of that franchise. So this is something to keep in mind, that the States is no longer the one who deals the card, who calls the shots in this one. So actually, everybody, the executives in the Hollywood industry should really take into account China as the major factor apart from the States. So grossing domestically is one thing, but grossing in China, this is another one to be wary of.
And I assure you, this will never happen again in my kingdom.
Have I offended you?
Many people claim that this forced political correctness is a double-edged sword, because on the one hand it may appeal to some viewers, on the other hand it may put off completely the other ones, the more classic ones, the more traditional ones. And in this case, with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, it seems that this is one of the reasons why it detached itself completely from the predecessors, especially from the original trilogy. I know that the times back then were different, so we have to take that into account as well, but generally it doesn't seem that it's a good trend, or if we keep talking about money, it doesn't seem that it's at least a profitable trend anymore. And maybe this is the language that we should be speaking right now in terms of the executives of bigger studios. That it's not a money-making machine anymore. So maybe thanks to this, they will decide to change something in their minds and let the filmmaking be a natural process, more organic and not so forceful. Let's hope so, let's keep our fingers crossed, but we'll see what the future may and will bring. Regardless of all the negativity, all the negative opinions about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I would still like to give it a go, because to be honest, I can feel it under my skin that it will be exactly as many people claim it to be, and also the example of my friend, so it proves me right, that it will be serviceable, let's say, up to a point. So it is like a 5 out of 10 film, and I've seen the score being given to it by some people, some YouTubers, who know better than I do, that's for sure. And this is also my gut feeling, my intuition, that I know what to expect. I need to keep my expectations very low, and I'm not expecting too much. So I would like to see Harrison Ford saying goodbye to his iconic character, one of his 2 iconic roles. And I think that there will be some adventure. Of course, it's too long. 2.5 hours for this kind of film. It even works at the disadvantage in terms of the profit, because the shorter the film, the more screenings during the day, like it was back in the day. I remember the example of Love Story from 1970. So thanks to its short running time, it was possible to have many multiple screenings during the day.
I'm sorry.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
Love Story. Own it now on Blu-ray and digital.
So for example, instead of 5, 6, 7, you could have 10, 11, 12. So it makes a big difference. It makes a big impact in the long run. I have nothing against longer films, so I love those epic motion pictures as well, but it doesn't apply to all examples, to all instances and all genres. So you have to just remember about the viewer, that you create films and you shoot them for the viewer, for their pleasure, not for yours as a director or as a screenwriter. You have to take that into account, and the rhythm, the pacing needs to be right as well. It needs to be spot on if you want to enjoy the film. So that's why I'm surprised that actually James Mangold, he has said in one of the recent interviews that he has tried to follow Steven Spielberg's advice. So think of your film as of a one elongated trailer. It constantly needs to keep the audience at the edge of the seat. And I think that it's a very valuable piece of advice. You need to keep the recipient, the viewer, interested. That's the main point. It's always been like that.
I know that one thing he said was these movies are a full-length trailer.
Yeah, that was one of the great pearls from him, was just thinking of an Indiana Jones film in its entirety as a kind of 2-hour trailer. That
Unfortunately, this new Indiana Jones film, it's not very encapsulated, and sometimes allegedly it keeps dragging and dragging, unfortunately, for no good reason. But again, it's only a hearsay, so I cannot vouch for it, not yet. Another big concern of mine is the potential demographics of the viewer. Because to be honest, I'm a kid of the television era. So I grew up watching television, whatever was there, so I would just watch it. So of course, one of the staples of the mainstays was the Indiana Jones franchise. So I am this kind of a person. So to me, this Indiana Jones, the new one, it still has some appeal. There is still some nostalgia towards it and some sentiment. Although I know that it's also like an artificial product just to make money, apparently, evidently, from what others have been saying. However, so I get it, but the newer generation, people 5, 10, 15 years younger than myself, so they have no attachment to Indiana Jones, to Harrison Ford. And pardon my French, but I think that many of them, they see Harrison Ford and they just may say, who is this old prick? Why should I watch him jumping and doing stunts, crazy things, and just pretending to be youthful again? And I kinda understand it, but of course it's very unpleasant, but this is what some of them must be thinking. Yes? Who is this old timer? Why should I spend my time and money watching him? I have completely no interest in that. And I can imagine that Indiana Jones, it doesn't strike the right chord in the younger audience. They have no sentiment, maybe they recognize the franchise, but it's not as big of a franchise as Star Wars, which has been renewed and it's extremely popular. There have been fan conventions, people putting on costumes, even up to this day. So it's been going on forever, from the 1970s. So it doesn't have the same cult, Indiana Jones, that franchise, I think. So that's why you cannot rely on young people going to the theaters, going to the cinemas in order to see this new outing. And that's why also this film may completely flop, because it doesn't connect with the younger audience. And on top of that, so I don't think that young people are so attached to the cult of the cinema anymore. Probably they would rather stay at home and watch it on some streaming platform, wouldn't they? We can't blame the youth for being just like that. They've been raised in this new digital era, so it's a completely different world. So they don't know any better, let's say. Unlike myself, you know, I'm a kid of the television, so the kid of the cinema as well. So I know those days. Maybe that's why I like having films in a physical form. But they are more digital, and the internet offers and has everything. And why should they go somewhere if they can have it on the internet or on a streaming platform? I kinda understand their attitude, because this is the sign of times that maybe something should or will change, whether we want it or not, in terms of the film distribution. We'll see what the future brings.
Hold on!
I also think that James Mangold, responsible for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the director of this film, right now he's in a very tight spot. Because even when he was offered to direct the film, he can't have said no. Can you imagine? One of the biggest studios ever offers you something like this, puts it out on the table, so you can't say no. Yes, this kind of an offer you can't refuse.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
So he was in a very tight spot. He had to go with it, and I guess I would like to believe that he did whatever was in his power. He did his best to create a watchable spectacle. And you can't blame him for that, possibly, because, like I said, he couldn't have said no. He was in that kind of a position. Of course, many people praised his previous film, Logan, and for good reasons. And with this one, so I'm afraid that he may take a slap on the wrist in terms of his career, but hopefully no. Hopefully people know better and they know that
you still have time.
Even if this film flops, even if it's a disaster, I haven't seen it yet, just a reminder, so they won't blame him fully for that fiasco. Because, like I said, if you get to be at the helm of something so spectacular, so big, this kind of a huge project, so you simply cannot say no. And sometimes even the executives don't take no for an answer to make it worse. So I think that we should defend James Mangold, because it is not entirely his fault, at least.
I mean, in a way, Stephen and I spoke probably every 2 weeks at the longest. When I was shooting, he was shooting Fabelmans when we were making the movie, and he would be watching our dailies, and we'd be talking. And he was involved, obviously, as Jez and John Henry Butterworth and I worked on the script. But so his advice was never ending, meaning it was an ongoing relationship with, you know.
You have to admit, though, that the titular song from all of the Indiana Jones films, this is something magnificent. This is just another earworm from Hollywood, another recognizable, everlasting tune. So I remember at the beginning, do 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 do. Everybody recognizes it, right? I don't think that there is a single person who wouldn't know what kind of tune it is. And I hope that it pops up in this new one, in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. We'll see, but it would be unthinkable and unimaginable for them not to have used it, to be honest. It's too cult of a song not to have used it. But you never know. Maybe they were aiming for something better. I hope not.
Indy! Give him hell, Indiana!
So that is my short take on the whole situation on the new Indiana Jones film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So I hope that you have enjoyed this unusual format and this formula. If you have liked it, please give this video the thumbs up. Share your thoughts on this film with me if you have seen it at the cinema, what you think of it, whether it really is such a disaster as they make it out to be. And if you are not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to it. And I hope to see you guys next time. Maybe if I have a chance to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny at the cinema, I will post a review of it. Why not? And thank you, take care, and until next time. Cheers.